So, I wanted to try an Australian Chardonnay, so I've picked up a bottle of Petaluma's 2021 Piccadilly Valley Chardonnay. So, Petaluma, quite a famous winery in the development of the Adelaide Hills wine producing region. Started in 1976 by Brian Croser. Croser himself, a huge figure in the development of Australian wine in the 80s and the 90s and their exports, and somebody who trained and mentored an awful lot of Australia's top winemakers, certainly a hugely influential personality. And Croser's view when he started the winery was that it was important to marry soil and the conditions of a vineyard to each variety. So he, with Petaluma, he had sort of three areas of working. One was the Adelaide Hills, where they had Chardonnay planted, and they also made sparkling wine base. They had a vineyard at Hanlon Hill, still do have a vineyard, in the Clare Valley, producing some excellent Riesling, and they make they make Cabernet Merlot blends in Coonawarra. So each region felt best suited to the varieties grown there. So the Adelaide Hills, Piccadilly Valley. Piccadilly Valley is a sub-region of the Adelaide Hills. Similarly, the Adelaide Hills wine growing region is a sort of a sub-region of the Mount Lofty ranges. We're to the east, perhaps slightly to the southeast of the city of Adelaide itself, within at least an hour's drive, so quite easy reach of the centre of the city, and in an area altitude about 400 to 600 metres above sea level, and where you get a relatively high rainfall because of the hills, and a certain amount of mists and fog that will also cool the climate as well as the altitude. The sites tend to be hillside sites, so generally they're hand harvested, and it tends to be an area for producing higher quality fruit because of the fact that it's that bit cooler and a little more challenging to grow grapes there. Croser was, as I say, started the winery in 1976 and sold it in 2001 to an American group called Accolade, who have a number of wineries in Australia. The wine itself has been a really sort of typical Adelaide Hills Chardonnay, that more sort of elegant, slightly refined, barrel fermented style there. So let's see what we make of it. Firstly, talking about the colour, it's a medium yellow, maybe medium to pale. It's not particularly deep yet. I mean, it's still quite a young wine. It's only got 13.5% alcohol. It's not particularly throwing heavy tears on the glass, although there is some note of it there. It's not a hugely viscous wine. On the nose, the aromas really are quite powerful. They're ripe and they're rich, and there are two elements here. One is the barrel fermentation, and the other is lovely concentrated ripe fruit. So the fruit sort of has character of ripe peach, ripe pear maybe, but also into a much more tropical riper note, almost a sort of a mango hint there as well. There's quite an intensity to the fruit, and there's when I'm talking about fermentation aromas, I'm not just talking about the barrel. I mean, this ferments in barrel, in barriques, so small barrels. About 30% of those are new, so there's quite a big influence of wood flavour there. So the aromas you're getting, there's a certain amount of vanilla and cedar in there, but there's also the aromas of sort of creaminess from lees aging, so the yeast, once they've finished the fermentation, being stirred through the wine for about 8 months while it's in barrel, helping to protect it from oxidation and helping to give this sort of rich, creamy, some say buttery note to the wine that complements the fruit really quite beautifully. So let's have a taste, shall we? Flavours are intense, and the acidity is quite fresh. It's nicely balanced. It's not necessarily tart or mouth-watering, but there's sufficient to lift a lemony note that runs right the way through the wine. The alcohol it's giving a bit of weight and roundness. I mean, this is at least medium bodied. And you can feel a little bit of oak structure because it's a bit drying on the back palate. But the alcohol isn't too hot, and it's not really picking out that oak too much. Well, the oak is very present, and as I say, it probably needs to settle a little. The fruit has a ripeness. It's much more the peach sort of style. We don't. I'm not tasting as of yet, at any rate, the mango fruit note coming through there. It's not got that sort of ripeness on the palate. As I say, there's that sort of lemoniness coming through, and so the finish is a play-off between the sort of lemony freshness, which is long and runs right the way through the wine. It's quite a lean style. It's not sort of fat and rich in terms of the fruit, and that lemoniness is sort of playing against creamy, buttery smoothness that's actually just sort of starting to pull the oak and the fruit together. I think the wine needs a little more time to harmonise. I mean, 2021, it's had a couple of years in bottle, but just over a year in bottle because the rest of the time was in barrel, obviously. And the wine will still harmonise, but it's got nice intensity, it's got structure, it's got length, and I think this wine, given a year or two, will settle down really nicely. So a very classic Australian Chardonnay, perhaps not in as big and richer style as in past years one might expect from Australian Chardonnay. But so thank you for watching. That's Petaluma's 2021 Piccadilly Valley Chardonnay. Bye now.